And you're very welcome to episode 111 of the Irish Photography Podcast. And today we're talking to Robert Mulraney from Caves of Ireland.
I don't know who you are, but welcome to the Irish Photography Podcast. Sit back, relax, and listen about cameras, gear, settings, stories, and all things photography. Join Dermot and Darren on Ireland's Best Photography Podcast. Let's go.
And you're very welcome to the Irish Photography Podcast. I'm Darren, I'm your host this evening. I'm joined as ever by Dermot in Limerick. Dermot, how are you getting on, buddy?
I'm doing really well, Darren. Delighted to be back on the podcast. It's been a bit of a week break. You know, I think it was kind of deserved. We've gone close to 2 years without missing a Friday, but if I'm being totally honest, Darren, I welcomed the break. The fact that I didn't have to edit a podcast kind of gave me a sense of freedom. And I think we need to kind of sort out our schedule a small bit moving forward, but we'll talk more about that. But for now, we have a special guest on today. Who have we got, Darren?
We have a very special guest on this evening. It's a person I think that, you know, we'll be very interested to learn more about what he does and find out, is it a passion, is it a hobby, or is it actually, you know, something he does from a professional point of view? We're talking this evening to Robert Mulraney from Caves of Ireland. Robert, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks very much for having me. It's good to be here.
How are you?
Good. We're excited to talk to you this evening. I think, you know, there's a number of things really that, you know, we'd like to be able to learn more about. And I suppose even thinking about that, you know, as by the title would say, it's caves, so it's Caves of Ireland. But, you know, you are a person that goes into caves. There's a name for that. You'll tell us what that is during the podcast. But, you know, to start off, I suppose, really, from a photography point of view, did you start off as a photographer and then take up going into caves, or was it the caves first and the photography came after that?
No, actually, first, it was very definitely photography. I would have been taking photos since as a kid with a sort of point and shoot film camera back in the day, and still have that actually, an old Fuji thing. But I would have been doing that, and I would have moved into landscape photography nearly exclusively. I would have been doing landscapes, and I kind of got bored taking photos. My passion for it kind of waned about 10 or 12 years ago. I think I got bored with the digital format really. You know, I'd go off outdoors, take a load of photos and come back with 100 raw files that all look the same, and I kind of got drained with it, you know. So it was around then about 7 years ago I started caving properly, and I decided, this is the place to take a camera, really, you know. But actually, it's really not a place to take a camera. It's a terrible place to take a camera. But I was persevered, and 2 or 3 cameras later, I'm still doing it. So, it was just an opportunity to take photos that not many people take, you know, especially in Ireland where there's very little, you know, on that front. So
tell me this. Why go cave diving? Or cave diving, do you hear me? Go caving,
I'm not crazy.
Why are you drawn to these caves, these tight spaces? This place is obviously not for people with claustrophobia in any way, shape or form. So I like the excitement kind of style of it. I'd love to give it a go, but what's so appealing to it that draws you there all the time?
I guess it's just I'm into the outdoors. I'm into hill walking, climbing, all this sort of stuff. And to me, this is just it's an extension of that. But it's also, at the end of the day, it's really just it is exciting, it is fun, but it's really just it's an experience I don't get anywhere else in life. The only thing I can actually compare it to is diving. It's like I've only dived once, but like similar to that, it's like an experience that you don't get anywhere else. It's a unique world that you enter into, and you just can't replicate it. It's just everything is different. The sights are different, the smells, the sound. You know, you just see things that you don't see anywhere else on the planet, or you know. True. So it's just that to keep coming to it. It's like a childlike excitement you get out of it, you know. So
lovely answer.
And I suppose, you know, when you are going into the cave, as you say, it's a whole different world. It's a whole different experience. And I think, number one, you wouldn't want to be claustrophobic anyway. So
no.
Go into an area like that. But you have to have your wits about you when you're going down there, obviously from your own safety point of view, but then you're bringing a camera. So I suppose the question then is, what type of photography is it? Like, is it landscape photography? Is it scientific photography? Is it exploration, something like that? Or because you're actually doing an action sport, is it sports photography? What type of photography do you do when you're in the cave, let's just say?
Yeah, I guess it encompasses all of those to some extent. There's very definitely people who take photos in caves for different reasons, for recording scientific things being done. People who are trying to record the sport and the moment. For me, what I enjoy is, while I like to capture a sports element, it's really an extension of landscape photography. You'll see in any of my photos, or rather in all of my photos, there's always a person in it. So that might in some way take away from a landscape photo effect. You don't usually have people in landscape photos, but for caves, the scale is so difficult to understand that the person is kind of a plant to give you that, to draw you in and show you the scale, So for me, it's very much a form of landscape photography. That's what I like to think of it as. But also encompassing other elements, sports and exploration and so on,
Any scientific discoveries that you've made? You've gone down there.
There's always things that have been found of various different value. Let's say I was away in India last year on expedition to Meghalaya in the northeast of India, and there they have big proper caves. You don't need to worry about claustrophobia there, but beautiful caves, and constantly every year there's kilometers discovered. And last year the team I was on discovered a cave that was about 115 meters deep and about 3 kilometers long, and in the very bottom of it was the very bottom of it had pools with fish, and those fish are now, basically they've been identified as the biggest cave fish in the world. They're they're enormous blind fish, fully adapted to living in caves. So huge potential,
Wow.
Again, like with diving, it really is another world. So
yeah.
So
talking about diving, right? So for me, when I go scuba diving, I have to have a special housing for my camera and special underwater strobes. Is it something similar when you go photographing in caves? Do you need special equipment, or can I just bring in a Canon EOS R, a Sony A7R? What do I need specialized equipment to go into the depths of the caves?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you're going for a trip, you can certainly take a little digital camera and capture some sort of moments. That's what my first photos were like, I guess. And but I think the first problem you notice when you start taking photos in caves is you obviously need light. There's no light in the cave, obviously. So the first thing is that if you use your onboard flash, you start picking up moisture. Maybe it's the same with diving, but you start picking up moisture that's between the camera and the subject. So straight away, that's the first thing that has to go. So you have to move all your lighting away from the front of the camera. You have to do different techniques. Backlighting is a really obvious one. That's another reason why there's people in my photos. There's usually a light hidden behind them. So yeah, there's I mean, you can really use a lot of different equipment. Some people are happy just to, some people will light paint. That causes problems because you need long exposures, and it's hard to stay still in the cave for 20-30 seconds. It's cold, it's miserable, and people get grumpy very quick. So some people have good success with light painting. Others bring in flash guns and maybe use slaves triggers, slave triggers. What is that what they call it? I call them slaves, but radio release. So some people use that. I use all of this equipment. I also use flash bulbs, the old vintage flash bulbs, and I remember that essentially means you need to put your camera on the bulb exposure, put it on the tripod, and you're firing these flash bulbs. They put out an enormous amount of light and give you a really nice warm effect to the cave, So actually, sorry.
No, sorry. I was just so the equipment that you use is obviously going to be rugged as much as you can to go down there. Let's talk about what you need to wear. Like, obviously you're not going to wear a Nike tracksuit pants going down into the cave, and
you would, dear.
You know, and a tank top and a wife beater, you know. So what am I going to be wearing? What am I going to be wearing going caving?
Well, essentially, essentially you want to wear something warm. So we wear a kind of onesie as our base layer, a big one-piece sort of furry warm suit, and then over that we wear something very hard-wearing. They're typically caving suits that we buy from special manufacturers. They're one-piece suits. They're very, very hard-wearing. You can get PVC ones that are waterproof, that inevitably tear and don't remain waterproof very long, which are great, but usually no matter what you do, you get wet, you get cold. And we usually helmet with a light, gloves and wellies. We actually wear wellies. It's the most reliable thing to wear in a cave. Tried a few other things and you always come back to wellies. So, and then that, you know, for a lot of caves in Ireland, that's really all you need, and it's actually quite affordable hobby to get into. But a lot of caves are vertical, so especially the ones up around Fermanagh, Sligo, Leitrim, they're very vertical in nature. So to access them, you need to learn a new sort of set of skills, and you need to wear a harness and use ropes, and that's another step away, let's say. But
and you know, it's interesting you say, because bringing all that gear down there, number one, for yourself, number two, for the harnesses, ropes and safety, and then number three, the camera gear. And we mentioned a couple of items obviously you're using there, so you're going down there with the intent in taking the photo, so you've got the gear to allow you to do that. But you alluded to a moment ago some of the techniques that you would use, and you know, possibly people that do portrait photography would understand it from the backlight point of view.
Oh yes.
What other type of things would you use, or what other types of techniques would you use, or have you taken or learned from landscape that down into the caves, let's just say, to be able to get the shot?
Yeah, I guess the main thing, and this is where it's very similar to landscape, is the thing that it all comes down to is light. You know, it's really like landscape in that sense. But I always compare it to landscape for the fact that I'm too lazy in some ways to get up at 4 o'clock and drive out to the coast and wait for a nice sunrise. I did astrophotography years ago, and I lost patience for it, and you know,
and sleep,
and sleep, mainly sleep.
Usually sleep, you mean?
Yeah, that's it. So I like with landscape, light is your important thing. It's exactly the same down there, but the big difference is you bring in your own light, you know. So you're actually using the same techniques as you're using with the sun, you know. The shots that I'm happier with are the ones where you get, you know, nice contrasts and good detail from side lighting as well as backlighting. So you're often trying to backlight to bring out the detail of the cave walls, and then you might, if you have the actual physical space for it, you might be throwing in some very light side lights just to bring up the textures on people's oversuits and to light up their faces or whatever. But so like that, I think it's very much like landscape, you know. And there's always a few tricks you can use. Like if you use these vintage flash bulbs, you're using a long exposure, and you can sort of slow down water, like with a long exposure above ground. You can get that effect. But then if you want, what you can often do is you can light the cave with these flash bulbs, because they really give you that volume of light. And then you can expose the any running water you have with a flash gun, which will really give you an aggressive sort of broken up effect of the water. So you can kind of control it, and it's unusual because, you know, a photo like that you might expose for 2 seconds, but the length of the exposure is only obviously as long as the light that you put into it. So
you can manipulate the whole place yourself, basically. Like, you can do the whole cave is your oyster, and you can do what you want, really, can't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but generally it doesn't want to help you out now, but generally it's got obstacles of all sorts. But yeah, on a good day, you can do what you want.
So tell me this.
It'd be interesting. Sorry, Dermot. It'd be interesting to see, like you say there, with the different techniques and coming from landscape. So leading lines are a big part in regards to composition from a landscape point of view. And you're dealing with rocks there, I think, which would be fantastic to have reflected light coming off of them as well. So you'll get light and shadow off of those.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest part then is, and you mentioned about that you've got your whole area to yourself, but you are effectively God, per se, that you're controlling where the light's going to go. So it's pitch black. So no matter what you decide, if you want to have the most subtle bit of light over on a small rock on the other side that you see with your flashlight, thinking that's going to be a nice anchor in my main image, bang, then you've got complete control. I love that idea,
Yeah, that's exactly it. And you can play a lot with depth and size. You can put someone far away in the distance, someone at the front. And that it will instantly give you a sense of depth and scale. And sometimes a lot of photos, not just my own, but generally in cave photos, a lot of good ones you'll see. You look at it and you go, oh, look at that guy standing there, and then you go, oh wow, there's someone way off there, and they're just up, and there might be a whole area of darkness in between the two people. And things like that give a nice effect and bring out the adventure element and the
I love
the excitement
of
it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. So let's go to a quick break now, Rob, and we'll be right back after a word from one of our sponsors, and let's talk more about caving, because Darren, I think I might found something new to do. All right, so we'll be right back in a minute. Today's episode is sponsored by O3. As a company with an international reputation for quality and customer care that they are told is second to none, they fully understand their obligation to you, the customer. Each suit is manufactured to an established procedure that they have developed and evolved over the years. With their experienced, dedicated team, O3 has grown into the respected dry suit and wetsuit manufacturer and is an established market leader, putting quality, neoprene innovation and service at the very core of everything they do. O3, come in from the cold. And you're very welcome back to the Irish Photography Podcast, and we're still here with Robert, and unfortunately Darren is here also. But let's jump into one of the questions that I was actually going to ask you on the break, Rob, because I wasn't messing before we left. It's something I would like to do, and it's something I'd love to do, and I'd definitely give it a go. So, where are the locations in Ireland for someone, especially me, just say I'm a newbie to it, I want to try it out, so I want somewhere safe that I can just kind of dip my toes into and kind of get a taste for it? And then can you tell me, where's the cream of the crop then in Ireland, and maybe the cream of the crop that you went abroad?
Okay. Well, I guess the caves are where they are. They're in two main regions and a few other places. So the most well-known region is definitely Clare in the Burren.
Yes, it's only down the road.
A couple of thousand. Yeah. I mean, obviously, there's enough to see in Clare above ground. So you'll see on my website, I don't have many photos from Clare because I like the Burren so much. I never get into the caves properly, but I hope to change that soon. So,
cool.
So Clare has quite a lot of caves. They tend to be horizontal stream caves in nature, so you sort of walk into them and sometimes crawl, obviously, and they have rivers running through them, and they're very pretty. And then the next main area is Fermanagh Cavan, so all along the border, up around the Marble Arch Caves. There's quite a lot of caves up there. Not as many as Clare, but they tend to be more. They're horizontal in many parts, but they tend to be sort of older caves with vertical shafts that lead into horizontal passages. They're the ones that I shoot in most. I used to live up in that area, so I was in the neighbourhood as such. And then Sligo Leitrim has has more caves still. They're vertical in nature. And then you have a few scattered areas. You have a few in Antrim, a small amount in Monaghan, some in Mayo, some in Connemara, and Cork as well has quite a few.
I bet they're crap down there, yeah?
I think so, yeah. I'd imagine so.
Everything down there is terrible.
They're well balanced caves. They've got a chip on both.
Yes, we'll go away with that one.
Well, and so I guess you're asking how do you get involved in it? Well, the first thing I'd say is, locations can be found, but you don't want to just walk into these places. They're very dangerous. They really are dangerous. I mean, if you go in a organized way, they're not dangerous at all. But if you walk into it not knowing what it is, you could be walking into something that unknowing to you will flood to the ceiling after a bit of rain. And there is caves like that. There's caves that'll, if it's raining when you go in or while you're in there, it's going to flood to the ceiling, and there might be somewhere to hide, but there might not, depending where you are. So, but so cavers know what caves. You just avoid them during bad weather. There's other caves that are loose and can collapse. So there's a lot of various grades of safety and things you have to be aware of. So the best thing, if you're ever interested in caving, the best thing is onto the website caving.ie, and that's the Speleological Union of Ireland. They sort of oversee the whole sport, and they can put people into contact. They're always keen to get people involved. They can put people into contact with local caving groups, and we have everywhere there's caving. Essentially, we have groups. There's some small caving groups up in Fermanagh. There's a good few caving groups, Clare Caving Club in the Burren. There's a new caving club. I was actually out with them 2 weeks ago down in Cork. So they've just got going and they're active. So they're exploring these caves. They are. They're exploring caves that people haven't looked at in a while. So quite a few years. And then there's Dublin groups, Dublin Caving Group, so on. They will go down to Clare up to Fermanagh, and they're very good for beginners as well. So brilliant. It's actually easy enough to get into. They'll always cater trips to new people,
Brilliant. It's definitely something to look into. So thanks, William.
And out of all those areas, I suppose, really, Robert, have you a favourite?
Yeah, I think Fermanagh, the caves of Fermanagh are my favourite. Fermanagh, Cavan, they don't change the board. They're my favourite. I like the vertical caves, and they excite me most. But do you mean favourite cave or favourite region, or?
Either or, yeah. You mentioned a number of regions, or is there a specific cave then within that area, or is your favourite cave in a different area altogether? Then
no, I guess Fermanagh. Those sort of caves are my favourite, and I mean, there's a fantastic cave up there I like that consists of two big potholes. One is in Fermanagh, the other's in Cavan, and it's called Paul Nataga, Paul Pruglusk. Photos of it on my website. But if you split your group into two, one can go down the Cavan sinkhole, the other can go down the Fermanagh one. Set up all the ropes, and then you crawl from one into the other through some very nasty tight passages, terrible for bringing camera gear through. You'll hopefully meet the other group in a wider area, not somewhere too tight, or you might literally have to crawl over them, as I did. I crawled over a few people, and they'd crawl over me, and some big fellas in that group as well.
No, it's going to like Robert Mulraney after this one, no, huh?
Yeah, exactly. My God. And then when you get past that sort of bit of torture, you end up at the bottom of another pothole, and the ropes are there, so you can actually just escape that way. So that's incredibly good fun, really, really good fun. So
that's cool.
Superb.
Yeah. So, Robert, with all the talk about these caves, and you said your favourite region is Fermanagh, and obviously County Clare, since I'm an honorary Clareman at this stage, where is there somewhere that you want to visit, somewhere that you haven't been to yet, and why?
I guess the caves I'd like to go to most would be caves of China, or the caves of Southeast Asia in general, Thailand, Vietnam. These are all the caves that that you mainly see photos of on the internet, and they're amazing, and they're the caves that we don't see anything like that in Ireland. We've got more miserable caves here, so
but we've got character. We've got character, though. We've got our caves have character.
They got character, all right. Yeah,
well balanced.
Well, yeah, but I think you know, you just want to have a break sometimes and just get the really big, glorious stuff, you know.
Yeah.
So and those Southeast Asian caves are big and glorious. You know, they're amongst the biggest passages in the world. They're enormous. You know, the unique sort of they're unique habitats. They've got trees growing in them and holes in the roof, and so I'd love to see these sort of places.
Yeah, I mean, like it's unbelievable what you can see in those areas. Like in scuba diving, there's these things called cenotes. I don't know if you know what it means, but it's an underwater cave with these beautiful kind of it's just these caverns, and there's just the way the rays of light hit the water and then come down through them, and the visibility is so clear there you can actually see through the water and what's beyond it. Like, you know, so.
Well, you know, the funny thing with those is I've only ever seen, I was in Mexico many years ago and I saw a couple well before I was into caving, and the funny thing about those is that they as clear as they are, once you dive them, I believe, you know, once you go to good depth into them, they actually become very dangerous, very visibility becomes very bad, you know, so they look like heaven to dive in, but I think they're more like hell, you know.
Well, a mate of mine now did dive in one of them, and he said the reason why he found it dangerous because he didn't realise how deep he was, because it was so clear. So he could still see where he was supposed to be at the top of the water, but because when we dive here in Ireland, the visibility isn't great, so you're very conscious about your depth and where you are at all times. But when he saw it, you know, he's using his eyes really to kind of judge it, but he should have been using his computer as well. It's just kind of like, I can see I'm fucking fairly close, but then he realised he's close to fucking 35 metres, 40 metres. And then he's like, okay, now I need to do some deep stops on the way back up. So yeah, you just got to be careful, you know.
It's terrifying, yeah.
And Robert, you mentioned there a moment ago about, you know, the different caves that you have to go through. I think that idea going through between, you know, Cavan and Fermanagh and you're meeting in the middle, that's a tight spot. But how big are caves generally? You know, you mentioned there about the ones in Asia, which are they're the poster boys, I suppose. Really, they're ginormous. They must have unbelievably beautiful stalactites, stalagmites, and everything else that's coming through the whole thing. But in Ireland, how big are caves generally here?
I guess compared to those caves, they're tiny, you know. But you know, you can spend as much time as you want exploring some of these. We're not stuck. We're not short. Like, so for example, I was just thinking there, like the biggest cave in the world in terms of length, because there's various different ways to measure. The biggest cave in the world would be Mammoth Cave, and that's in the US. And that's and there's one in Cork called Mammoth Cave, but it's a bit smaller because the one in the US is I think it's 700 kilometers long.
What?
So
700?
That's incredible. Yeah, I had to check that before this because I actually didn't believe it. But yeah, that's true. Wow. So compared to that, in Ireland, our longest cave is Poulnagollum, which is in County Clare, and that's 16 kilometers. But that's still a huge cave. That's a huge cave still, yeah. You can do multiple trips in a cave like that. You can go in one entrance. You could spend 6, 7, 8 hours there, come back, and then the next day you could go in another entrance and spend as much time and not cross over much, you know. Wow. So that's kind of length, and then you have I guess depth, and the deepest cave in the world would be in Georgia, and that's 2.2 kilometers deep, and that's nearly all vertical. You're literally going down on rope 2 kilometers. That's an incredible.
Here's
depth.
A weird question for you, so right? If it's 2.2 kilometers deep, call me stupid, but the only stupid question is when you don't ask. Does it get warmer the deeper you get because you're getting closer to the centre of the Earth, or does it even matter 2.2 kilometers?
I actually don't know for certain, but I think it does, even in the small amount. I think it does get noticeably hot. But then you know, the presence of water can really cool down the cave as well. You know, so yeah, I'm actually not 100% sure about that. But just caves like that are so exotic, and so they're so different from what I'd be used to as well. Like, I mean, the deepest cave we'd have in Ireland is about 160 meters deep. That's which doesn't sound like an awful lot, but I mean, try climbing up rope for 160 meters. It's fairly it's you know, it's tiring, and it's that sort of depth in the dark looks, you know, even you become aware of the depth of something with just after 3 or 4 meters, in a cave. You really notice it.
So tell me, like you'd say it's black in some of the caves. So what, like, I do a lot of scuba diving, and I've been in some caves underwater, and I was only talking to Darren before, like I was in a cave there a few weeks back called Donegal Point in County Clare, and it's just off George's Head there. It's an amazing dive site, and it's pitch black in there, so you need a light. But can you tell the listeners what it's like to be above water, and tell them what exactly pitch black feels like?
Yeah, I guess you don't have to go far into caves in Ireland to actually be in that. Like you could go in 20 meters and actually be in pitch black. Less in some cases. It's strange because it's when you knock the lights out and you put your hand in front of your eyes, you expect you're going to be able to see something. You expect your eyes are going to adapt and you're going to see your hand, but you can't. You literally can't. It's very peaceful. It's a strange mix of peaceful and mildly terrifying.
I just would say, do not shit your pants.
yeah, exactly. And I mean, like, I've been in situations before in caves where I was in maybe an uncomfortable spot and my light would be knocked off, and it's very, very scary then. I used to use a carbide lamp which actually has a little flame on it, and I remember about being ready to abseil off this ledge, and the flame went out and I was just hanging there, and it was a cave that I had never been into before. In fact, people hadn't been into it for 20-30 years, and it was terrifying. You suddenly lose all feeling of where you are. But generally, if you go somewhere nice, I had a backup light, thankfully. But if you go somewhere nice and turned off, it's actually quite meditative. You become aware of other things around you. You hear the water, if there is water. You hear it drips, and if you're in a cave for long enough, you actually get this heightened sense. You start hearing everything. You start actually hearing things as well. You start hearing people that aren't there.
You hear people that aren't there?
Oh yeah, totally. I've been in caves, overnighting in caves and things like that, and you're there so long, and the sounds of the water flowing in the distance, you really do imagine people are talking in the distance, And I thought that was just me being crazy, but it turns out other people do the same occasionally. So it's quite a trip,
Interesting.
Yeah.
And actually, two things you mentioned there, because I've been in a couple of caves, never with my camera, but I've been in a couple of caves, tourist caves, let's just say. One that I was in was in Mitchellstown.
Oh,
We did that test where they turned off the lights.
Yeah.
They said, okay, no, you're in pitch dark, and you, exactly as you say, you'd expect to see your hand in front, and you're waiting there, and there's nothing happening. But I was very immediately conscious then of the noise, and I could hear the echoes of the noise. And I remember saying to the girl at the time, it's like, the sounds here are crazy. It's kind of echoing around all the chambers.
Yeah.
And she had said to me, well, they've also done concerts and stuff down here. And I went,
that's right. Yeah.
They've done concerts down here? Imagine
that's
what
right.
that would sound like. I mean, have you ever been to anything like that, or experienced any music or sound underneath that really amplifies and elevates the whole environment?
Actually, I've never been. Mitchell sounded concerts, I think, every year in the summer, except this year, obviously. But so I've never been to it. I'm curious to try it. But what I have done is a friend of mine up in Fermanagh would put on small sort of gigs in caves, very small, usually just one person with one instrument. Something like that. Yeah. And it's bizarre, not a rave, no, we wouldn't get away with that. But usually sort of experimental or ambient sort of music, and they'd usually fairly basic, but often brought in a little sound system in there, and played around with it, and you definitely get very immersed in it. The sounds bounce off the walls, and it's a perfect sort of natural theatre for music. As long as you obviously treat it with respect and don't sort of bring a band and all the groupies in and wreck the place, but it's it can work.
Bag of tins.
Well, that's my one, bag of Budweisers. But Robert, I actually have the perfect tool for you for when you do caving the next time. So I got these little speakers. They're called Braven Minis. They're waterproof. They float in water, so you can literally strap one to your camera bag. They cost like only €39. They're unbelievable, and they're very, very rugged. And they're absolutely a gem. So we used them up in the secret waterfall. Yeah, we used one up in the secret waterfall in where are we at? Donegal, that's the one. And it was perfect. I mean, wasn't it great crack? Like, it was brilliant to have it on the bag.
Yeah,
it was, and it was pissing rain as well, and you even put it into the water. And I was like, "What are you doing with the speaker?" And you could see it moving out the bubbles in the thing when it first went in as well, moving out any air that was reminding it of remaining in it.
That's insane. Actually, I must look into it because it's actually normal in the caving community to bring music or whatever into caves. If like a lot of trips, it's not a lot, but many people will overnight in a cave, or they might go into a cave and literally start digging, moving stones and soil out to try find new cave, and they're so used to it, they often bring in music and just, go along on a Wednesday evening after work for an hour or two and tip away at this little job. So it's quite normal to bring music into caves, and it's sort of on big expeditions where people are underground for days on end. It's very, very much the norm,
So Braven Mini. Absolutely. You need to buy one.
Yeah, it sounds great actually. Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. Okay, look, we're going to take a quick break here, and we'll be right back with the final part of this evening's episode.
This episode is sponsored by Regatta Great Outdoors. Established in 1981 and in Ireland since the year 2000, Regatta Great Outdoors has a philosophy of producing affordable clothes that look as good on home, on the school run, or for leisure wear as they do out hill walking. The brand is very highly regarded for its stylish yet weatherproof looks, and is loved by ramblers, amblers, hikers and bikers, campers and gardeners, daily commuters, dog walkers and multitasking mummers, urban roamers and outdoor adventurers. Regatta Great Outdoors, for every adventure.
And you're very welcome back to the final part of the Irish Photography Podcast. And Robert, something that we have with all of our guests on the shows, we ask them to tell us a funny story. Now, that can be a story from a photography point of view, or even from your point of view with caving. But across the board, what's your funny story?
I was thinking about this, and there's definitely a lot of funny things that happen in caves, but many of them I can't tell you. But no, I was going through some photos here, and I was reminded of a time about 4 years ago. 4 years ago, I was in southern Albania on an expedition there with an Irish team. We were looking at caves down there, and we had a few days. I had a day off, and we were staying in this rural house that we were renting, and I had a day off, and I was sort of relaxing, and I decided I'd go and check out this one little cave around the back of the house. And it was literally, about 3 meters from the back of the house, just in the wall behind the house. And I was told by the landowner, "Oh, there's a cave there, and it does go on. It's a bit of a cave, but there's a problem with it." And I said, "Okay, well, what's that?" And he said, "There's grenades in it."
Oh, Jesus Christ!
And I said, "Okay, well, I'm not going in there, but not that crazy." But so I said, "Oh, that would make a good photo. Like, how often do you get the chance to take photos of grenades, in a cave?" So I said, "Okay, take me there." So we went out to this cave, and it was only slightly bigger than myself. It was a small entrance. And right. I was looking around, and he said, "There you go, that's them." And I saw these two big, very large hand grenades, very large World War II Italian grenades, and they were big sort of cylinders, and they were red.
Or the size of your fist, like, are bigger, or like
almost bigger,
Jesus Christ!
Yeah, kind of, very chunky, and they were from World War II, and they're apparently just sitting there. So I thought, okay, I'll have to get a photo of this. So I got the camera out and got my flashes, and I stuck the flash slaves onto the flash, and put them in, very carefully arranged them around just in the... So I wasn't actually in the cave, it's just my upper torso in the cave, and I put the flashes in there. And so I was nervous, as you can imagine, just being around these things. So I took the camera up to my eye and took a photo, and it was literally bang. And it was like for a second it felt like, that sort of experience of your life flashing in front of your eyes.
Jesus Christ.
I just saw this blinding light and this enormous bang, and I was told I let out quite a squeal. All it was my flashes going off, but
you thought World War II started again. Yeah,
exactly. The boom of the flash, the sound of it echoing around a little chamber, and the blinding light that hit me right in the eye, and I thought, oh my god, this is it, so
oh my god,
yeah,
that's good.
But,
that's good. That's very funny.
That's good. Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Excellent. So we have a regular spot on the podcast, and allegedly I am the king of gas, right? So I'm kind of stripping my title of that because Darren's been spending a few euro there recently. But anyway, moving on. So we have people that come on the podcast, and ourselves, we kind of get someone to pick what's called a VSP, very solid product. And what a very solid product is, it gets the gold seal of approval from myself, Darren, or our guests. So what is the one thing for photography that you would use, or something related to photography for caving, that you wouldn't leave home without? It's the number one thing that you really, really need to use and that you trust by.
Well, I actually have to think about this. Found it very hard to come up with something because I find taking photos in caves, gear is one of your main issues. Everything is against you, I've lost numerous cameras, loads of flash guns. Yeah. Nothing has stood the test of time in that sort of environment. So everything fails, disappoints, So I found it very hard to think, but I guess there is one particular thing that stands out to me, and that's actually flash bulbs. These old vintage flash bulbs. They're not really used much for, especially by digital photographers. I mean, they're usually used by film photographers. They're not even made anymore, generally speaking. But they stopped making them generally in the 80s. But that's what I could leave home without them for sure, but I've started using them above ground for lighting up things like old churches and in urbex environments and things like that. So I started using them. They just put out so much light, and it's a really dramatic, warm light. And I just find that they give a certain characteristic to my photos that I actually don't know how to get with a flash gun, or I think can't be got with flash guns. The smallest of these is the size of your thumb, or half the size of your thumb, and it puts out the same amount of light as a regular camera flash, an electronic flash. And the biggest one is bigger than the old-fashioned light bulbs, and they put out an incredible amount of light. So when you're backlighting with that, you can really get streaks of light. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
So
high intensity light,
very, very much so, yeah. And to me, that's kind of a defining feature in my photos, and I kind of find it hard not to use them, even though they're one go per bulb. So,
Cool.
So hang on. So Diarmuid now is the king of gas, right? So immediately he's thinking as number one, he said he wants to go caving. Number two, okay, I need to get these. But you said it a moment ago that they're not being made anymore. Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
And you get one flash per bulb. So that's effectively self-fulfilling prophecy. They won't be around for much longer, I imagine. So Diarmuid, get them quick.
Yeah.
Robert has the stock in all of them. He's probably got them all in his wardrobe, but he'll go way out of it.
They're all up in the attic. Up
I
there,
fucking knew it.
2,000 of them. Yeah, they're all mine. Not sharing them.
Yeah.
And tell me, it's fascinating hearing what you're, telling us about in regards to the differences and also the similarities from a photography point of view, from above the ground to underground. Mm-hmm. And it's a completely different environment and completely different world. And I've really enjoyed, I suppose, learning more about it. So thanks for that, I suppose, for that insight.
You're welcome.
Robert.
Thank you.
Have you been able to get out during the whole lockdown period of time? And what's next for you? You obviously not going on a trip, or have you got a trip in the planner? So what's next for you now from a caving point of view?
Yeah, well, obviously the COVID put a stop to it, like with everything else. And as cavers, we have to be responsible to the fact that, you know, you can go off with your friend and go caving, but we have a system in place for a backup system that will see that we're essentially rescued, you know, a call-out system that will see a rescue crew mobilised to save us if we're not out by a certain amount of time. So, you know, there's a lot of responsibilities. You don't want to be going out and exposing them. So that's pretty much ground to a halt. I went caving for the first time this year, which is because I took a few months off caving just before lockdown happened, which is a terrible decision. So really,
double whammy
decision in retrospect. Yeah. So I got 6 months there. I only wanted 1 or 2, but I got 6 months off. So so it's slow getting back. You know, I met up with some people down last week down Tipperary. We had a look at some caves around there, and hoping to make it down to Clare over the next few weeks and up to Leitrim. So I think it's going to be gradually, bit by bit, with small crew, not meeting too many people. But long term, got plans. I want to get on international expeditions before. I've been abroad doing this before. Really enjoy it. It's very intense. You go off for a week or two and explore these new caves and map them and take photos. So I'd like to do that and work towards getting into some big caves and big, you know, try to get photographing big spaces and new environments, and so there's no end to things to do, really, you know.
Brilliant. So
exciting time.
You definitely got my attention, that's for sure. I swear to God, you really do now, because I like to do new things. And I like the idea of, like, I do a lot of scuba diving, so I can maybe marry one to the other in experience wise, you know. So I'll kind of, I never know, I might be water to a duck's back. Is that the saying? I don't know what the crack is. But come here, that's the one. So, like, if there's someone else that wants to know more about caving and wants to know more about Robert Mulraney, where can we find that?
Well, I guess for caving, to go to a place, really, because there's not that many cavers in Ireland. It's a relatively small thing. So caving.ie is a go-to point for all the information from the Speleological Union of Ireland. They cover all the different groups. And for me, I've got this website up. I've had it up a number of years, but it's been revamped. My partner helped me, actually pretty much revamped it herself. It's cavesofireland.com. It looks pretty nice, quite pleased with it. Actually, it looks great. But so that's basically where I present my stuff. I'm on Instagram as well, Caves of Ireland. You can find me there. It always comes back to the website. So got loads of updates. I'll be throwing up pages on the expedition to India with lots of good photos there. So that should be going up soon. So
that's awesome. So will you make sure to do some Insta stories in those caves and take us along with on your trip, so we can all experience it vicariously through you?
That's what I like to do.
Irish Photography Podcast, so we
of course,
follow along with it, you know.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
We'd love to see it. Excellent
Brilliant.
stuff.
So listen, Robert, I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation with you this evening. I think it's been fascinating, you know, to learn more about it. Thanks very, very much for coming on, you know, and I urge our listeners to go find out more and go look at Caves of Ireland, I suppose, and see the beauty that you're able to capture when you're done. Yeah,
thanks very much for having me. It's been great.
Thanks, guys. Thanks very much for listening, and Moss here, Slán Fall.
Heyo.
Thanks, bye.
Hey guys, if you dig what you're hearing, why don't you jump over to iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Give us a 5-star rating, and don't forget to share with your friends. With all that done, we'll see you next week, and remember, keep shooting.